Pranams, namaste. Welcome to Shakti Punch Mithros, Mithronis. On this show, we go together hand in hand on a cosmic voyage to unravel the mysteries of reality through a Dharmic, Indic perspective. I am your host, Pranav. Thank you for joining me here today. We're doing reality divinity practice from a Dharmic, Indic perspective. Did I already say that? It's okay. We keep it rolling.
It's a little early today. It's our earliest Shakti Punch.
Earliest Shakti Punch, yeah. If I'm looking a little scraggly right now, because I'm actually shooting something with Adi. We're making a little short film as well. That's why I'm looking like this. I'm supposed to look like a raggedy bitch.
We're on our Marty and Bobby vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
For the Scorsese fans out there.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Every day that you guys are with us is a blessing. I love it. Quick shout. We got a Patreon, guys. We would love if you can contribute to it. There's a lot that goes into this production. There's a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, a lot of equipment. Anything you can contribute would be great. We're here doing this for all of us. We're trying to proliferate the Dharma, understand Dharma, and bring it to a new generation and a new audience. So I hope you'll contribute. Also, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, et cetera, comment, all the engagement stuff. Let's get into it today. Adi, first of all, I do want to give a shout out to somebody. This is a fan of the pod who also happens to be an artisan of sorts, an artiste.
Wow.
Who makes these beautiful malas, which I believe are made of sandalwood. I'm waiting to get the specs on these, but they are some kind of a wood. It's sandalwood or tulsi. I'm forgetting which. And man, these are gorgeous. These are some really beautiful malas.
I've never seen one in like that blue before. It's gorgeous.
I know. I saw that and I was like, I think I'm going to give this one to my girlfriend. She likes blue. Yeah. And I'm going to wear this one around when I'm like out on the town.
Oh, let's go.
Being a Dharmic boulevardier, so to speak. But these are beautiful. Man, they're so smooth. The japas just roll off, dude. These are going to fast forward you into moksha. Okay.
Yeah.
Right away. You're getting in there in no time. Okay. You can go at light speed. They're so smooth in your hands. They really are. They're beautiful. They're elegant. And they're just, they're handmade too. Okay.
Gorgeous.
These are really beautiful. Everybody should go. If you're interested in getting one of these, go to Shiva Das Yoga. That's SIVA_Das, DAS_yoga, YOGA. Shiva, thank you so much for sending these over. They're just beautiful. I'm really happy to have them here. I'm excited to be using these and wearing them. Now I use Rudraksh typically when I do Japmala. And typically now whenever I'm doing any kind of japa, it's just totally internal anyway. But I always have a use for a good Japmala, and I'm sure you do as well. Also, guys, time on the clock, 426,870 years, 117 days, and blah, 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 blah left in the Kali Yuga.
Less than last time.
So that's something, that's something. I want to do like a specific Kali Yuga style theme New Year's thing, right? Where we do it according to the Kali Yuga clock somehow. Okay. I have to cut the math on that, but...
and we have to get an astrologer in for that.
We have to get an astrologer in for that.
Because they're going to be talking about lunar calendar, meeting solar calendar, and...
I think everybody has to come dressed as Kalki or something. I don't know if you've got a white horse or whatever. That's the only real description of Kalki, It's
a white horse, yeah.
It's a white horse. I get to read I guess there must be a Kalki Purana maybe or something like that. Prophecy isn't like the big thing in Dharma, you know what I mean? Like whether it's Lord Rama or Sri Krishna, any of the avatars, they're never like predicting the future. Buddha's not telling us what's going to happen in the future and this is going to happen and then the great thing, right? It's always like, no, these are the teachings. This is how you navigate the Dharma. This is how you're surfing on the Dharma, right?
It's very present.
Yeah. Yes, it's very present, right? It's all about just unraveling the layers of self, right? To experience the ultimate reality. Today's going to be a very lighthearted episode, actually.
Cool.
I want to start with a bit of fan mail. We've been getting a lot of great DMs on Instagram from people and a lot of great comments on YouTube as well. And I'm going to talk about two of those, once at the top of the app and then the other at the bottom of the app, or maybe as the sort of meat of the episode, actually. Because a lot of interesting comments and then a lot of interesting questions and things like that. So I want to actually pull up, if I may, a DM that I got from somebody on IG named Kirtan. And he sent such a lovely note, and I've been getting a lot of just amazing, lovely notes, which are just like really long, and they're really the show is resonating with people. And man, that does it for me, right?
100%.
That does it for me, because all the things that they're talking about and the things that the show is doing for them is exactly what I think we wanted to do for people. Anyway, let's get into Kirtan's message here. Hey, y'all, Texan. My name is Kirtan. Just recently discovered your podcast and basically binge watched all the episodes and signed up for the Patreon. Hello. I have been looking for something like this for so long. Grew up in a small town Oklahoma. God damn, that's intense. Okay, Oklahoma. My dad wasn't religious growing up, but came to America in 1969, and interestingly, got caught up in the countercultural energy of ISKCON, that's the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, in those days. Stayed super involved with ISKCON afterwards, even though we lived hours away from the nearest temple in Dallas. My sister and I came up in that tradition. First of all, I think that's fascinating and very interesting that somebody who comes over here, maybe not very religious, through America and American countercultural pop culture essentially gets into Hinduism that way.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating sort of recursive thing that's happening there.
100%.
Very fascinating to me. Dharma has no limits. My sister and I came up in that tradition. The few other Indian kids in the town where we grew up were brought up with various kinds of Hinduism. By the time I was growing up in the 80s, 90s, ISKCON was already changing from a hippie countercultural kind of thing to a middle-class Indian immigrant kind of thing. I experienced this growing up in Pennsylvania too, and we will talk about it. Sorry, I just skipped out. It was already becoming a countercultural thing, middle-class immigrant kind of thing. And I didn't feel at home in that kind of a temple, though that probably says as much about me and my hang-ups as anything else. I don't think any of the other Indian kids I grew up with maintain any kind of religious practice either. I think we all made like an aesthetic decision. We didn't want to be part of a religion that we just saw as a bunch of irrelevant, lame-ass rules representative of the values of our parents' generation, that we threw out the baby with the bathwater. I'm maybe now only realizing. Anyway, I've been trying to make my way back to a practice that makes sense to me, trying to do japa daily, and I'm trying to read what I can. I had not heard of the Yoga Vishishta until your podcast and did pick up a copy, but it's been so hard for me and my wife to find an in-person spiritual home, even in a place with as many Indians as Houston. Most temples here are still middle-class Indian first-gen immigrant kind of places. Maybe, probably, I need to just get over myself and start going. But until then, things like your podcast are just absolute godsends to where I am in my spiritual life, dude. Thank you.
Wow.
Look forward to listening more. Thank you again for doing this. First of all, thank you, Kirtan, so much for watching and also being a Patreon subscriber. That means the world to me. And your predicament is an interesting one, and it is a relatable one. So Kirtan is looking for an in-person spiritual for home. And now I'm not a guru, so everything is saying is I'm just a lay person and a seeker like you are, Kirtan. And so I'm just going to draw whatever I tell you from my own experience as that. I'm not an acharya. I'm not a guru. All my knowledge comes from the things that I read and from my own guru as well, and primarily from him. So what I'll say is you're looking for an in-person spiritual home. And for that, I say, buddy, take one good look in the mirror, man. You know, that is your spiritual home. These bodies that are housing these jivas, this whole thing of our jiva, that is the first seat of contemplation that we can find. That's my first thing that I would say, but I understand why that might not be a totally satisfying answer. And that's because, as Kirtan noted in his message, and as we have discussed various points on this podcast, religion is an aesthetic choice, right? Yeah. It's philosophy and ritual, music and lyrics, right? It's like that's what we're after here. And you need a sense of something community oriented as well, and something that is guiding you through ritual aspects of things. So, well, look, while the first part of my answer is a bit annoying and unsatisfying, I also want to say this. I and most other Hindus that I grew up with and that I know only went to temple on special occasions, right? That would be for holidays, Diwali, etc., very special pujas that were happening, things like that. Early childhood, you know, it was also more often a place for community gathering for exactly the people that you're talking about, Kirtan, who are first-gen immigrants who are coming here and need to find their community. And let's face it, socializing as well. And maybe that isn't your cohort of people to socialize with. Totally get that as well. But I also found that going to temple was also an interesting place where, like, the aunties, aunties love to gossip. You know what I'm saying? They're on the phone, pata, pata, pata. That's Hindi, you know. But they wouldn't go there and gossip, right? They're making the food to serve and all that and stuff like that. But, an interesting thing that I found is they were also going there to kind of swap notes on a lot of their own individual spiritual learnings, right? So at the small temple that I grew up in called the Hari Temple in central Pennsylvania, I found that as time went on, a lot of these aunties and stuff would start they'd swap notes about spiritual things that they're learning. Somebody becomes a Radha Swami, somebody gets into Osho, you know what I mean? And then they would all swap like CDs with each other, or audio cassettes. And so I remember like going to school and stuff. On my way to school, my mom would sometimes drop me. We would be listening to like an Osho tape randomly, which my mom was too conservative to really get into Osho.
I love that image though.
Yeah. People are retarded, The problem is, and I'm like, hey, this guy's pretty amazing. But look, so part of it, Kirtan, is yes, you got to get over yourself and just go to the temple, right? Because, the ritual aspects of this are important. Ritual is important, right? There are things that are happening. These are energetic exchanges and energetic transactions that are happening, which are important. And it's good to take part in those things. And it's also good for what I just mentioned in terms of like, these may be immediately on your face are not going to be your immediate cohort of like cooler, second gen Indian kids or whatever, Indian people, right? You're not a kid, right? But it's important to go. It's important to go and to see what it's all about in terms of that. And it's like, you might surprise yourself too in terms of the kinds of people you interact with there and also the kinds of things that you learn. And also it's a place to absorb the aesthetic qualities of our very aesthetically maximalist faith, right? And the other thing is that, look, in the absence of that, let's say you don't want to go to the temple, right? We didn't go to the temple growing up. We did all of our praying at home. Right. We had a puja at home, right? We had like a little mandir of our own at home. And I think every Hindu that I know grew up having this, right?
Everyone has one cabinet in their kitchen that is not
for kitchen stuff, right?
And
so in my place, when we were growing up, we grew up in a relatively small house, and in the hallway closet in the middle, that was just the puja closet, right? And sometimes it would have to share space with linens here and there, and stuff like that. But, as the fortunes of my family rose in the world and they moved into a bigger house, they had an entire room dedicated to doing puja. Right. And then they could build out all of their, the murtis and stuff. They would have better like pictures and their altar became more elaborate and things like that. But so you should try and actually start to build a temple in your own house. That should be where it actually starts, because prayer and meditation and doing japa and stuff, that should be a daily practice, right? That's where that's how you start to realize the benefits. Like you can't be no part-time lovers in this, Ain't no half stepping. You gotta just try and do it every day, right? And look, it's not a rigid thing where if you don't, you are doomed. No, it's just like, this is how it's going to work. You know what I mean? This is how you're going to really realize the benefits. So doing it every day. And you know what I realized, Adi, which is so funny, is as I'm in my own little apartment in New York, which is not that little, it's a decent sized apartment for Brooklyn. I have my puja in the exact same place as my parents put the puja in our home growing up in our small home in central Pennsylvania, which is the middle closet, which is where I used to keep the linens. And just in the past year, I converted that into my puja. Yeah. And that's where I do my puja now, in the same place where my parents did it growing up. And I kind of loved that.
I think two things. Like, one, I'm just thinking about my dad, who's maybe one of the most faithful people in the world that I know, but also like the quietest. He doesn't need to validate in many ways his faith to anyone else, or his belief in God, and his puja every morning, right? But I remember we were traveling in, and this was in Memphis, and we were traveling and we're sharing a hotel room, and he wakes up, Indian dad times, like 4:45 or some shit. Yeah. But I just remember looking at him, and he, had come out of the shower and he had his towel around his waist, and he was just praying to the sun. Yeah. Because his puja, like our mandir at home where he normally played, obviously wasn't with us. Yep. But it kind of underlines this idea that like the puja is really where you are. Right. Yeah. And this manifestation, the reason we worship idols is because we can manifest these things that we're reaching for in anything.
Yes, 100%.
Right? In anything. And 100%. I think that's beautiful, from a Shiva lingam to the sun to
I mean, the sun worship is
epic too.
I mean, it really
the rising sun. I mean, it is an epic feeling.
I mean, dude, it's also great. I mean, look, the most rudimentary and elementary first asana or flow that you'll do in yoga is, of course, Surya Namaskar, right? And so I think there's something really beautiful that get into yoga too, bro. Get into the pranayama, do all that stuff. Kirtan, thank you so much for DMing me. That really, like, that made both of our weeks. Like,
it makes me kind of emotional, to be honest.
It really does. It really does. And look, there's another aspect to this also, which is that when you go to the temple, most traditional Hindu temples, period, are not necessarily places of congregational value in the sense of you're congregating to do ritual, but it's not like
Baptist.
It's not church or mosque or Catholic church where there's a sermon, right? Friday sermons at the mosque or whatever, right? You go to church on Sunday and he's giving you a lecture of sorts, and there is a value in that too, right? Music and lyrics, like, we got to know what this is about. And I think that's something that, we have satsang and we want to develop satsang. And I think Shakti Punch is a kind of a floating satsang that we want to kind of establish here. We want to have these conversations. So we really encourage people to keep commenting on YouTube, keep DMing us, commenting on Instagram videos, because these are all conversations. We're not the gurus. We're the acharya. We're not the acharyas. We're the shishyas, just like you. We're all in this to learn together. And I've learned some amazing stuff from people who have commented and DM'd as well.
Oh my God, yeah.
And so we are trying to do that with Shakti Punch as well. This is a satsang, right? This is where I'm not preaching, but we are talking, and whatever it is that I'm learning, I want to share with other people so that they can help further elucidate and enliven that experience of learning and help to kind of proliferate it to all. Kirtan, thank you again for commenting or for DMing us. That really meant the world to us. Let's move on.
17.
Oh, shit. Okay. Guys, a very funny thing. This is going to be a very lighthearted episode. I was reading the Yoga Vashishta, as I be doing, and I was reading the story of Bhagirath, right? And Bhagirath.
From Jungle Book?
No, but maybe. Was that a character in Jungle Book?
Bagheera.
Okay, Bagheera. So this is Bhagirath.
The panther.
And as like a lot of the characters that we encounter in Yoga Vashishta, he's a king. And like all the kings in Yoga Vashishta, he becomes disillusioned with material reality. And like all these kings, he goes on a soliloquy. And I want to read this soliloquy. It's very funny. I found it really highly amusing. Let's go. Here we go. There we go. Okay, here he goes. One day while remaining alone, he reflected thus: this worldly life is really essenceless and stupid. Okay. Day and night chase each other. People repeat the same meaningless actions again and again. I regard only that as proper action, which leads to the attainment beyond which there is nothing to be gained. The rest is repeated foul execretion, as in cholera. Bhagirath is like life is diarrhea. That's literally what he says. Venkatesh Ananda tried to doll it up and be like, repeated excretion. Yeah, that's diarrhea. Okay. Repeated life is diarrhea, according to Bhagirath. And I was reading this last night after a long day of shooting with you, and I was like, this is what we're talking. This is one thing we're going to talk about.
After I made you do 30 takes of one thing, that is kind of a repeated execution in a way.
No, that was gold. But anyway, like, guys, all this material reality, it is really all just diarrhea. Now, of course, Bhagirath ends up, obviously, like all the other people, he decides to get into devotion, self-inquiry, renounces his kingly duties, goes to the forest, completely forgets who he was, becomes basically a roving rishi or sadhu in the forest, a mendicant. Then he's going around with his begging bowl and then somehow ends up back in his kingdom. And they're like, it's you. We love you. Oh, my. It's like that Coming to America. It's like, it is you. Oh, my goodness. It is you. And they're all worshiping him. And then he's like, all right, I'll be your king again because now I know how to do this dispassionately. And then he also, Bhagirath, by the way, also ends up bringing the Ganga down from the heavens into earth.
Wow.
Yeah. And so everybody can enjoy the divine libations of the Ganga. He somehow steers it through the matted locks of our beloved Mahadeva. Okay. I just thought that was hilarious. Life is an unending stream of diarrhea. One thing I want to talk about, and this is based on somebody who had commented on a YouTube video, is life a video game? I want to get into this. Okay,
Cool.
just really quickly. Is life a video game? According to a Dharmic conception, I think Dharma, in many ways, there's a lot to learn from video games in terms of Dharma and vice versa. So we're getting fanciful here today, I know, but somebody in the YouTube comments noted, I think his name was like Omkara Meditation 108, which is like
He has great comments,
He has
though.
great comments, this guy.
shout out
Omkara Meditation
Omkara
108.
Meditation.
You're the man, bro. We love you. Please keep
108.
commenting. 108. I know, and it's such a great online style handle. You know what I mean? Some people will be like, racist 69 or whatever. He's like, Omkara Meditation 108. He's just like bringing the light. It's like such a gamer name, you know what I mean? I love it. And he brought up something interesting, which is he noted that moksha is interesting because once it's been attained, the jiva actually has the opportunity to return to a body and experience life for a number of reasons, to do good, experience things, etc. And that reminded me of a conversation that I had been having with some other dharmic friends of mine about video games. And I realized video games are quite dharmic. Actually, they really are. The narrative ones, especially, right?
Yeah, like first person kind of.
Yeah,
or third person.
The
player.
third person, I mean, even first person shooters, sort of, right? Like
But third person's especially, you're on this journey.
Yes,
sort of,
yeah. So like Ghost of Tsushima, Black Myth, Wukong, God of War, the games that we love, Last of Us, stuff like that.
Last of Us is too Dharmic and
I know, it's too dark. It's more Buddhist than anything, And I realized video games, especially these kinds of like just narrative video games, right? Not puzzle games or sports games or fighting games, right? They are extremely dharmic because look, think about it. Like we're living our lives in these games with the aim of constantly growing and leveling up. And each mini boss that we're fighting is a sort of lesson. Much in our lives, we have our own mini bosses that we're kind of having to struggle with. And the kind of basic conception around a lot of dharmic thinking, like excluding Buddhism where they don't really believe in a soul per se, is that, if you don't overcome those lessons, if you don't learn those lessons, in the case of the video game, you'll die, but you'll reincarnate immediately. You'll come back.
Yes,
right?
respawn.
Yeah, and you'll keep doing that until you can beat the boss, and then you get to the final boss, which is perhaps, I guess maybe if you're talking about that's like self-inquiry, right? If you're at that stage of, maybe the other ones are things like, giving up cravings and, doing this and doing a meditation and da-da-da, right? But in video games, it's successive levels of bosses that get harder and harder. And the highest and hardest form of worship is self-inquiry. And then finally, once you have defeated that boss, moksha, right? Moksha. And, so if we haven't learned these lessons, we're reincarnating, right? And that's either through karmic debts, right? That have accrued through our own actions in this life. Or if we've just not realized the true nature of the self, right? And then thus we have not attained moksha. And like in video games, we have the kind of four basic conceptions of what a Hindu life is all about and the purpose of it, which is Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha, right? Artha is prosperity. That's material gain. That's skills that you develop, right? Kama is, of course, pleasure, right? Dharma is, of course, righteousness, the path, right? And then finally, moksha, which is the release of this. And these are the four aims of Hindu life, just broadly speaking. If you're going into like a textbook on what Hinduism is, they're going to say this is the four aims of Hinduism, right? Which makes sense because it is very all-encompassing of the entire life journey from both this life and then into what is considered the afterlife. Or the life beyond would be a more accurate way of saying it. And this is most great video games, dude, right? You're always trying to acquire things, right? You're trying to acquire skills, level up your weapons, get better weapons, more resources so you can advance and beat bigger and bigger bosses, right?
Yeah, we were mentioning like really cool modern games, but like honestly, I was thinking about Mario.
Yeah.
And like it's really, it's also kind of like the Ramayana.
Yeah.
Which I think Vic Krishna had
It
a great bit, about that. But literally like Sita being stolen by Ravana.
Shouts to Vic Krishna.
Shout out to Vic Krishna. But yeah, the acquiring of the gold coins and the dying and the respawning and the trying again.
Yeah.
And
then you do enough
essence.
siddhis. You take a mushroom, actually. This is very well. You take a mushroom and then you get these siddhis. You can throw fireballs and stuff.
Totally. But I also think as video games are evolving, we brought up Last of Us 2, which is like probably one of the darkest artistic experiences I've had.
Super, dude. Super.
Right? Just like crazy. As a consumer, holy cow. I remember coming to your house after I played that for like 3 days straight and beat it. And I was
Pandemic,
like,
dude.
can you make me laugh?
I know. I remember, dude. I remember. Then we started making a bunch of funny sketches.
Yeah.
And look, Omkara Meditation 108. Love your name. I can't not smile when I say that name. It brings me back to your kind of point a little bit. It makes me feel like, okay, well, after we've beaten this game of the material existence, do we get to play life again on New Game Plus mode? Is that a thing? Do we play life on is there a New Game Plus mode? Do we have that opportunity of, because we have the option of exiting the game altogether, right? And then we're no longer in that world and we're existing in that higher reality outside of the avatar. Hello, avatar, they say, right? Your avatar in a video game. We have the opportunity to exist outside of that reality, right? Without the body or the pleasures of the game. Essentially, you're uniting with the creator, right? Or can we play it again to enjoy ourselves, right? To kind of experience other different kinds of things. And I don't know, right? I don't know about that. So Omkara 108 Meditation 108, as much as I love you in the comment, I also am not exactly convinced about this specific idea, only because, and this is something that's going to require further learning on my part as well, but where I'm at in my studies, it strikes me that maybe that couldn't be the case, right? Because life on earth holds nothing compelling to one who has tasted the bliss of moksha. Right? That is the thing that ultimately always satisfies, which is actually the shedding and the deconditioning that is the process of playing the game.
Yeah.
And so part of me is like, I don't know if that's a thing, right? It also ascribes too much of ego sense, ahamkara, to the jiva that has achieved moksha, right? Because that's part of it, is that you've scrubbed the ahamkara from you, right? Mm-hmm. That's the nature of Brahman, right? And so part of me is like, well, is there even desire then at that point, right? Because then we're getting into the realm of the more conventional Western religions of like, there's a heaven, and then you go to heaven and you can eat all the chicken sandwiches that you want and, have a bunch of sex or whatever. But it's like, we know from this life that that's boring. We see people who exist in that realm of existence, even on this world, in this earth, right? And they're not satisfied by it. And remember, these are regarded as the tamashik of the sattvic, breakdown that we had talked about a couple episodes ago, right? In terms of how divinity, how life is actually originates, how the gods originate from Parabrahman, right? So we know that that's not exactly something enjoyable, but he brought up an interesting point in terms of things like, maybe you have a specific purpose, and maybe you want to accomplish something or do some kind of good or things like that. And look, anything's possible. And as far as where I'm at on my own quest of knowledge, understanding reality through this Dharmic perspective, maybe that could be possible. I just want to learn more about it. He did also make a funny comment when I had said, "Hey, yeah, it's like a video game, new game plus mode," and then he says both of them have devs. Oh, devs! I love that. You goofy mofo. Omkara Meditation 108. We love you, dude. Thank you so much for that comment. Kirtan, thank you.
Very thought-provoking comment.
Yeah, very thought-provoking comment, very thought-provoking. And it really harkened back to this conversation I had with other people. And look, we do see that everything is sort of a metaphor for everything else, right? There's a very, I guess the term would be a mimetic experience of everything else. Everything is echoing in the same way into everything that we're experiencing, right? No matter what you do. And so why not say video games is actually the most apt depiction of reality? Video games are just games, right? And all gamesmanship is this that we're talking about, right? Progression, acquisition, progression, right? And also, in order to win in a video game, you have to cultivate dispassion, right? Mm-hmm. You have to do what's right as opposed to what's easy, right? Shreyas versus prayas. This is something that you learn about in the Upanishads, right? Doing what is easy and pleasurable versus doing what is actually good.
Yeah.
And in every video game, if you want to beat those bosses, it takes a lot of dispassion, and it's a difficult endeavor as well. So shout out to Kirtan, shout out to Omkara Meditation 108, shout out to you, Adi.
And to you, Pranav.
And to me, and to Mahadeva, and to all the devas, and to everybody. This has been Shakti Punch. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this fairly lighthearted episode.
I loved it.
I think this is a fun one. Guys, remember, we've got a Patreon. Put a little money in the hundi if you can spare it. Also, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Tell your friends about it. Get them involved as well. The more comments that we're getting, the better the show is going to be as well. We're all Shishyas. We're all doing it. We're Shishya Nation in full effect. We love you guys. Thank you so much. Om Namah Shivaya.